Our next speaker is Catherine Warwick, who I know is referred to as Cat. Cat is a PhD candidate from Western Sydney University, and her research encompasses the impact of contaminants such as heavy metals, nutrients and PFOS on freshwater ecosystems. Her focus is platypus populations. Her published research includes the first report on the presence of PFOS in the livers of platypus collected from across the state, and as we've already heard, from here. Her work with Dr. Wright has highlighted the widespread contamination of PFOS in New South Wales, but particularly in the Southern Highlands on the Wingecarribee River. Tonight, Kat will discuss the important findings of her research, what this all means, and will introduce us all to some of the local platypus residents of the Southern Highlands. So welcome, Kat.
Thank you so much for having me. I will answer to Catherine, but I'm usually only called that when I get in trouble, so it makes my heart pound a bit faster, so Kat is fine. Thank you. Now, the platypus is the coolest creature on the planet, and I will die on that hill. Has anyone ever seen a platypus in the wild? Right, so you're all dying on that hill with me, okay? We're gonna go out as a team. Now, the reason why they're so cool is because platypus are ancient creatures. They broke off from reptiles 166 million years ago. And then mammals followed them 146 million years ago. So these guys predate mammalian creatures. They are one of 5 species of monotremes. The other 4 are echidnas. So there's only one platypus, and it's here in Australia, so we're very, very fortunate. Now, one of the most important things about platypus is they actually inspired Charles Darwin to write his theory of evolution. And before you come at me and say he wrote the theory of evolution on finches in the Galapagos, you're right, I'm not denying that. But the theory of evolution was inspired after Charles Darwin came here to Australia. He had an Aboriginal guide take him to the Cox's River at Warwick, and it's here that he likened platypus to the European water rat and questioned how God can make 2 creatures so similar and yet so different. And it's from there that inspired that theory. So without platypus, we wouldn't have the great Charles Darwin. Now, one of the big issues that we face with platypus is that they're only found in certain places throughout Australia. So along the east coast, most of Victoria, down in Tasmania where the platypuses are huge. And we do have a reintroduced population in Kangaroo Island. Now, the problem with this is that people also live in the same places that platypuses live. So we have this conflict between human and animal, and human and environment. So our most populated regions are also the places where our platypuses live. Now, I'll start this video now. Platypuses are really cool. The males have spurs, and this is one of their reptilian traits. Now, the wonderful thing about these spurs is they contain a poison. Now, the good news is if you do get spurred, you will not die. The bad news is you'll wish you had, because it is the most painful thing on earth, I'm told. The pain lasts about 6 months, and there is no way to stop the pain, so painkillers don't work, and if you go to the hospital, the doctors will tell you to suck it up. I had a colleague up in Queensland who was spurred, and she said she'd rather give birth to her twins again, because that was less painful. So for the women in here who have children, there's something worse than childbirth. Now, platypuses also have, I'll jump back, I got a little trigger happy. They also have these beautiful webbing which makes them incredibly agile in the water. But they are, as you saw in that video, quite agile up on land, and that's because they tuck that webbing up and they walk on those claws, kind of like walking around on their knuckles, which is super cool. Now, This is my favorite thing about platypus. They photoluminesce, which means if you shine a UV torch on them, their fur will reflect that light back to you. And the coolest thing about this is we discovered this in 2020, so only 5 years ago, in the British Museum during COVID lockdown. A bunch of security guards were mucking around with a UV light in the exhibits, and the platypus furs glowed back at them and apparently freaked them out. So we are still learning about platypuses. Even to this day, there are still so many things we don't know. So you can kind of see in that video some of that fluorescence happening. So every time I go out and trap platypus, I always take my UV torch, and it comes across in this beautiful mottled sort of visual. Now, as Ian mentioned, platypuses eat water bugs, and platypuses will consume 28 to 50% of their body weight every single day. Now, someone actually did the math, and this is equivalent of you eating 37 pizzas every single day. And I like pizza as much as the next person, but not 37. These platypuses will consume that much every single day. And the reason they have to eat water bugs instead of much larger prey is because they don't have teeth. What they have is grinding plates. So they will go and forage in the sediment, and this will become important later. They will put those water bugs in their cheek pouches, come up to the surface, filter out the water, and they will grind up those bugs and then swallow them. Now, who here can tell me what a platypus sounds like? You've all seen one, but who's heard one? Can anyone guess what they sound like? Yes, you're not far off. So this was a male platypus down in Healesville, and he was very upset to be getting a microchip. So that's what that means. Now, what you're all waiting for, to meet some of your local residences. So here we have Raylene. She was trapped at Berrima, just under the bridge. She was a juvenile, so she had just come out of the burrow, less than 6 months old, 37.5 centimetres long, weighing just 730 grams. She was tiny. And then this is her re-entering the Wingecarribee River. And this is my proof that I don't keep them when I catch them. I always release them back. Now, our next resident is George. He was named after the father of a landholder that we trapped on near Bowral. A male, adult male. Now, the curious thing about platypuses is that once they become adults, they're impossible to age. So he could be 2, he could be 22. Don't know. He was 44 centimetres long, and he was 1.2 kilograms heavy. He was a big boy. And he did not like having to get out of the pillowcase, which I think is completely reasonable because they're in this really dark, safe enclosure, and then we open it with our torches on, and they're like, no, I don't think so. I think I'll just stay here. And so you can see my colleague, Michelle Ryan, really struggling to get him out. But once he's out, he's very quick to get going again. Now, George, I call him, he's my silly little goose because he was recaptured in that net 3 times before he worked out how to avoid it. And then our last one was actually named by employees of Wingecarribee Council. Patrick Taggart from the environment team actually came out, and someone from that team actually named Greer. Now, she's a female, and again, she could be 2 or 22, we're not sure. 28 centimetres and 700 grams, but you can see the size difference between males and females. George is 1.2 kilograms, and poor Greer is only 700 grams. Now, the exciting thing about these is we've just finished our breeding season, and so our females are about to head into the burrows. So we're hoping that come March, late February, early March next year, we'll have some of our young juveniles coming out of the burrows. So that is the perfect time for you guys to start looking for your platypuses again, because our juveniles will be on the move looking for their own homes. Oh, and here is Greer making her way back into the water. And again, she was another one who's like, I'm safe. I'm just going to stay here. But there we go. Absolutely beautiful creatures. All right, now on to my prop. Who here can tell me what the big killer of platypuses are? Yeah, go on. Fishing nets, yes. So I have with me an Opera House net. It's seen better days, I'll be honest. These Opera House nets are actually illegal in New South Wales and have been for a number of years. The disappointing thing is they're not illegal to purchase in New South Wales, just illegal to use. Ian and I were out collecting some samples at Whites Creek, and this is one we pulled out. So this came from your community right here in the Southern Highlands, and we only found it, 2 years ago? Ian, something like that, and this was after the ban had come in place. So my call to action for everyone here is if you see these, destroy these. If you see people using them, you have my permission to become violent. I'm usually not a violent person, but when I tell you that my heart stopped beating when I saw this, it was just, we've had instances where I had 4 platypuses turn up dead in one of these, and the record, I'm sad to say, is 12. Now, this is illegal, we shouldn't have these. However, another big killer of platypus is fishing line. Who here likes fishing? And that's okay if you do, I'm not coming after your fishing, but please take your fishing line with you. Of the 10 dead platypuses I have in my freezer, 9 of them were killed by fishing line. And it's because when you go fishing and your fishing wire gets stuck and you just cut the line, right, because there's no other way to get it, platypuses get tangled in that and it can cut off limbs, it can get tangled around debris, and platypuses can hold their breath for about 4 minutes, maximum 10. And if you're stuck on a log at the bottom of the river with fishing line, it's an automatic death sentence, essentially. So I'm asking you, if you see people littering of any kind of plastic, not just fishing line, again, you have my permission to become violent. All right, now onto the scary thing, PFOS. Now, there are 7 million types of PFAS in the world. I focused in on PFOS, which is polyfluoryl octane sulfonate. That is a mouthful, so I'm just going to say PFOS here from here on out, but I just wanted to say it so you guys knew I could say it. Now, it is an 8-carbon fluoro chain, which means it is a long chain, and that means it's a strong chain, and it's very difficult to biodegrade. Now, this chemical was produced, I think, in the 40s or 50s, and it was a miracle thing because it had withstood high temperatures, so it could be used to put out fires. It was waterproof, so it was just this amazing chemical, and it was initially marketed as a biodegradable chemical. It's not. As we're finding out. And so the way that it enters the water is it comes out in the firefighting foam, which we don't really use anymore, but it's used in non-stick cookware, your rain jackets, your waterproof shoes. It's used in lots of different materials. It's also found in plastic as well. And so once it comes off, it ends up in your washing machine, in your stormwater drains, and that's how it ends up in our river systems. And because it's hydrophobic, it doesn't stay in the water column, it clings to the sediment. And so remember when I said that platypuses like to eat a little bit of sediment with their bugs? This is how they're ingesting it. So for my research, I unfortunately collected 8 dead platypuses from across New South Wales and 1 dead one from Taronga Zoo. And I just want to preface this by saying that I didn't kill them. Let's make that very clear. These are platypuses that were unfortunately found dead by members of communities, so people like yourselves, who found them, collected them in garbage bags, gave me a call, and I went and picked them up or had them shipped, or someone brought it to me in some capacity. So this project was entirely reliant on people like yourselves coming across this unfortunate situation and doing the right thing and donating these bodies for science. Now, for the platypus that was found at Taronga, her name was Annie. She was 27 years old when she died, and she died of old age. So Taronga did nothing wrong. It was just incredibly fortunate timing on my behalf because she became our reference platypus. So we have Berrima. Down here is platypus B, Berrima B, platypus B. Now, results. Incredibly shocking. When I sent these liver samples away, I thought 1 or 2 low numbers, not expecting anything. Every single one of our wild platypuses came back with some concentration of PFOS. And down here at Berrima, you had the 3rd highest level of PFOS in that liver. You were bested only by the Hunter River at Newcastle, or Maitland, and the Central Coast. Now, I was not surprised by the concentration I found at the Hunter River. They've had all sorts of problems with PFAS and PFOS near their RAF base. I was a little surprised about Central Coast, but that is a whole story that we definitely don't have time for. But I was definitely surprised down here at Warwick because I largely considered this an agricultural community, and since all the mines had closed, I didn't really see an obvious source of pollution. And so this is where our big question mark comes from, is where did it come from, and what's it still doing here, and how do we get rid of it? Now, I also found something interesting, and this is where we started linking PFOS to our water bugs, is that when we look at platypus health, we measure it based on how much fat is in their tail. And that sounds really rude, but I promise it's really helpful. So platypuses store half their body fat in their tail. And we measure this by actually squeezing their tail together. And a fat platypus, its tail won't squeeze. A skinny platypus, you'll almost be able to bend their tail in half. Now, platypus fat goes up and down depending on energy levels and how much food is available. But what we found is that platypuses who had the fattest tails, so our healthiest platypuses, or the platypuses that ate the most food, had the highest concentrations of PFOS compared to those that were really quite skinny. And this graph is confusing because it looks like a tail volume index of 1 is our fattest. That's because we do our scale the opposite way. It's not my scale, don't blame me for that one. But let's put this into context. Is this a lot? Are we seeing a lot of PFOS in our platypus, and what does this mean health-wise? Now, if we compare this across the globe, so I looked globally, if we compare platypuses to mink and otter, so let's call these our North American and European cousins, because they occupy a similar ecological space, no, there's actually less PFOS in platypus livers compared to our Northern Hemisphere cousins. However, I had 8 platypus livers for mine. These mink and otters had hundreds, if not thousands, of samples. So we could be seeing different results in, say, 10 years' time when I collect more livers. And I am still collecting dead platypuses, unfortunately. But if we can compare platypuses to tiger snakes and our ringed seals, pretty much on par. Now, I do want to point out the polar bear is the anomaly in this whole thing. That is because polar bears eat the ringed seals, and they really liked ringed seals. It's their favorite food, so they eat a lot of them, which is why that level is so high. Now, that purple line across the top is our max concentration that I found, so that's that Hunter River platypus. So you can see it's actually sitting quite high. But again, I'm comparing maximum to averages, so take it with a grain of salt. But if we put this into context from a laboratory analysis, so when we talk about PFOS toxicity, we talk about it in terms of tests that are done on lab rats. It's not necessarily a good correlation, but it's the best we have so far. So I am comparing my platypus concentrations to NOAEL, which is no observed adverse effect level, which means at this concentration, we're not seeing any health effects, any behavioral effects, nothing. This is a safe-ish level. I use ish. At just a little bit higher concentration, we start to see developmental toxicity. So this is your liver tumors, behavioral changes, chemical changes in brains, things like this. And then the acute toxicity is where if you get that much, you die. So we're nowhere near acute toxicity, which is great. We are sitting roughly at this no observed adverse effect level, which is great news for our platypus. However, again, I've only got 8 livers. So we need more livers in order to determine if this is an accurate average reading or if we have a bigger problem at hand. Are you guys with me so far? I've thrown a lot of science at you tonight. All right, now, I'll wrap up here by saying our big takeaways, and because I'm an academic like Ian, I will also give you some homework. But it's easy homework. It's not pleasant homework, but it's relatively easy. But our big takeaway here is that PFOS is incredibly widespread. And unless we have adequate monitoring programs in place, we are going to be continually surprised when it crops up in random places like platypus livers. So we need to be implementing strong monitoring programs. we also know from PFOS, based on these liver samples, that it can hyperaccumulate in the livers, which means that if you ingest PFOS, it will target your liver cells and it will stay there for long periods of time. It's very difficult to remove. It can be removed, your body can remove it, but it likes to hyperaccumulate in the liver, which is why we get liver tumours. And something of note, potentially, is that our highest concentrations of PFAS were found in our youngest platypuses. Now, this could just be a sheer coincidence because of our small sample size, but I think it is worth noting that this could be a potential issue for all of our emerging juveniles that we have every single year, that they could be considerably more vulnerable to PFOS pollution than their mothers and fathers, shall we say. But here is your homework. The first one is a great one. For all of you that see platypus, take a photo, geotag it, upload your findings to the Australian Platypus Conservancy website. If you go out on a regular basis and you don't see a platypus, upload that as well. And the second one is a little bit more depressing, so only if you're in the right frame of mind. If you see a dead one, and I really hope you don't, but if you see a dead one, please let me know. So our email address is platypus@westernsydney.edu.au, and we will organise to either come and collect it ourselves, or we'll ask you to pop it in a plastic bag, pop it in your freezer, and we'll come down and get it. So I'm sorry to leave on a depressing note, but there we go. Thank you so much.